Test. Test.
Okay, I'd like to call to order the regular Board of Education meeting of August 25th at 6:31. If all please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Okay, this is first opportunity for public comment. A member of the public may address the board briefly for up to 3 minutes or request to be scheduled on an agenda for a future meeting. Please note that students will be given priority to speak on any topic. The first public participation portion of the meeting will be limited to 1/2 hour, 30 minutes normally, and limited to agenda items. A second public participation portion will be offered at the end of the agenda to allow for any other comments. Individuals addressing the board should take into consideration the rules of common courtesy. The public participation portion of the meeting cannot be used to make personal attacks against board members, districts, employees, or students. We do not have any students, but the first one will be Tiffany Alexander.
I won't waste time with formalities because I only have 3 minutes. First of all, there's a discrepancy with what's posted online and the actual motion, which violates legal notice, number one. Number two, having absolutely no community impact on getting rid of policies that directly impact thousands of students is a complete dereliction of everybody who's an elected official. It simply is. You are elected to represent us. That is what we elect you for. Some of you have brought yourself here on the reputation of being pro DEI and transparency. This is the opposite of that. We've had no notification to have our voices heard, absolutely none, so that we have to scramble. And what you have online is different than what you're proposing. So we don't even know what argument to make. When it comes to policies like the trans policy, every single one of you here who's been here knows that people have come here and used the fact that it's administrative guidelines and not policy to argue they don't have to do it. You're all aware of that. The DEIC, there's not a single solitary person who's involved in that who doesn't know exactly what you're doing. Not a single solitary one. Okay, Black people, immigrants, all people of color, the queer community, we are a small community in Saline. You think you're gonna get enough people every couple of years to represent all of us? Really? You have 60% turnover for the years that I was there. So you think that you're gonna get enough diverse candidates every time to represent all of these communities? You might as well hang a whites and straights only sign on the door. And there's not a single person I know in my community who feels they've had any chance for input. Everybody I've asked about it involved has pretty much said, huh? What? Nobody seems to know anything. Nothing about this is okay. And every single person who's up for any election on anything, yeah, I know, you're getting rid of all your policies. That's not a law, so I guess we're getting rid of the 3-minute policy too. Every single person who's up for election for anything, as much as we have advocated for certain people, is as hard as we will advocate against should any of this go through. Trans people, BIPOC community, immigrant community, religious minorities, all of these people will have absolutely no representation at all, and none of you are equipped to represent us.
The next public comment is David Hayward, parent.
I'm here to speak regarding your proposed motion to remove and replace wholesale and without any public consultation all current board policy with through law's quote-unquote policy product. It is deeply disappointing not only that you've chosen to overturn years of work of countless trustees and community members, but it's particularly shameful to do so with such minimal public notice and no attempt to engage with the community on an action which you know will directly impact the rights of thousands of students, families, teachers, and staff. Current Board Policy 0123, Philosophy of the Board, states that the Board affirms its intent to act as a truly representative body for the citizens in all matters related to programs and operations, and that further that the Board shall not relinquish or fail to exercise that authority. By taking this action, you are relinquishing your authority to set district policy to an unaccountable and unelected third policy, namely through law, and doing so with disregard bordering on contempt for the public that you were elected to serve. You're outsourcing your moral responsibility for the welfare of students of this district to a group whose role is, at least in part, to minimize the district's liability in the face of student and staff complaints. So it's no surprise then that their policies are, by all reports, far weaker with respect to student and teacher protection compared with your current board policies. Of course, it's especially disappointing to see your lack of conviction in failing to defend the transgender and non-binary policy, a policy that many of you patted yourself on the back for passing only a few years ago. But the fact is that even if this is the only group that's immediately affected by this purge, and it may or may not be, there's no way for us to know without having a chance to see the policy product, it's only a matter of time before Thrun decides that it's no longer politically and economically expedient to protect the rights of the next group of students. Eventually, it might even be a group that you yourselves care about. So you should think twice before making this sweeping move to completely abdicate your responsibility. If we need new policies, you should take time to consider how those changes impact the community and retain the policies that have been working to protect students, teachers, and staff. History judges favorably for those who accept their moral responsibilities, even when it isn't easy.
The next public comment is Charlie Hurst, parent.
Hello, yes, I'm Charlie Hurst. My pronouns are they, them. I am a non-binary individual, and I'm a parent of a trans student who is not looking forward to going back to school. It is extremely severe. Our kids are paying a lot of attention to what's going on, and unfortunately, there is a lot of rhetoric coming at our kids from all sorts of different levels that's very negative and very scary. And for me, as a parent, I am very, very concerned. So I do want the next school year to be the best school year for trans students ever. I want to have a great year. I just want to make sure that, like, the bedrock of our anti-discrimination policy, which is enumerated to include, gender identity, is going to be supported throughout these policy changes that are taking place. Now, tonight, on the action items, there's a proposed, a recommended motion to adopt, rescind, replace resolution amendments, Neola policies, bylaws, and administrative guidelines. And I think there's a lot of concern, of course, when you hear rescind, replace policies, bylaws, guidelines. But it says, except for the anti-bullying policy. So if tonight we could add to that motion, except for the DEIAC policy, and except for the trans non-binary student policy, so we can discuss it a bit more, I think that we can feel heard in this process. And, I do apologize. I haven't been to policy committee meetings. I, really would have loved to been at every single one, but time is, what it is. But I know that with these changes coming, we'll be paying very close attention to, the policy committee meetings. But I do believe that we agree on wanting to protect all students, period. So, thank you for your time. I look forward to hearing the rest of the conversation tonight.
The next public comment, Amy Teslin, parent.
I had the privilege and honor of serving as Saline Area School Board's first facilitator for the DEI committee back in 2019, and then as a member for the first 4 years of the DEIAC. And I sent this letter earlier today, so it's going to be a repeat for you, but I'm just saying it publicly. The DEIAC, I'm speaking for 2 points right now. The DEIAC policy. Obviously, the DEIAC policy has been proposed, a change has been proposed in terms of option 2. The reason given, this would broaden representation and incorporate new perspectives. This is a blanket exclusion, which is very extreme and purports to solve a problem that doesn't exist and doesn't align with any other board committees. And as Tiffany mentioned, we all know why it was what was proposed. In fact, for the 4 years I was on the DIAC, there was a 60% turnover of membership every year. Consider a student with significant disabilities or indigenous background serves on the committee would never be allowed to serve again for the rest of their lives. Doesn't this seem ridiculous to you? I 100% agree that it's important to broaden representation and incorporate new perspectives, but this change would not do this. Instead, it limits perspectives. The transgender and non-binary policy. Having worked extensively with educators, community members, and students on the best ways to implement the unanimously approved transgender and non-binary policy, the rescinding of this policy without any meaningful public discussion is extremely disturbing. My understanding from someone on the board who is not on the policy committee is that there will be an attempt to remove it now and possibly reinstate it in a month's time. If this is the plan, will there be a public discussion and a vote? If this is not the plan, speaking as a high school teacher and speaking as a parent of someone at the school who has many friends, and speaking as someone who wants to convey how important this is, that you consider the people that are going to be most impacted by the rescinding of this policy. The educators who devote all their time to be inclusive to all students. This is who it's going to impact. Obviously, it's also going to impact the students, which is the most important. Believe me, I dream of a day when we don't need this policy, but now is not that time.
The next public comment is Susan Eastep, parent.
All right, so I have a lot here, so I'm going to try to so I'm Susan Eastep, former board member, served on the board for 6 years from 2018 to 2024. I introduced the trans and non-binary students policy, and in addition, the DEIAC policy, which I want to talk less about tonight, and more about the trans policy, which appears that it is going to be completely removed. No other information on there, but removed with the Neola policies pack. Again, the language is wrong with action item A related to what is in the resolution. It says Neola policies. The resolution says all board policies, which is a question. If it's Neola policies, does that mean the board policy is not part of Neola, which was actually the DEIAC and the transgender and non-binary students policy, which simply had a number attached to it? Does that mean that stays? I mean, that's a great question. So maybe that was the intention, hopefully. So a little history, 2018, when I ran for school board, I met parents of transgender students. I was openly queer. I still am. But they told me that they had been talking to the superintendent on a regular basis and an administrator, and they were like, we want to get the transgender students policy here. 2018. I wanted that to come to the board. It was push back. I worked with these parents of transgender students who was meeting with the superintendent, and I said, hey, let's look at the national, standard policy. Ann Arbor Public Schools has the same policy that we based our policy off of, Saline schools, and Plymouth Canton, actually, the fall prior to us passing that policy, similar policy. They both used, and we used, Collins and Blaha. We did talk to Thrun, and they created a policy for us, which was not as robust. As you know, last year, as soon as the federal administration changed, Thrun had all of their school districts pull their transgender students policy. And so I knew when we were looking at Thrun as a policy provider that would potentially have impact to remove the policy that we have. Also, just real quick, because my time's running out, last year, I did mention that the Title IX reference was removed from our policy. Also, the new, the Troon, when I went to a policy meeting, Troon had said, they were talking about the policies, that it's okay to move your own policies over. So Saline could put their own policies over, and they could just assign a different number to it. There was nothing about, you all are backed up by Collins and Blaha. They are supporting Ann Arbor schools. And so I'm not sure why you're switching to a provider that you all can't make policy and have your own drafts. So I just want you to think about that. Sorry, I could talk all night. Bye.
Next public comment is Katie Mitchell, community member.
Hi, I'm not Katie Mitchell. I'm Kristen Hoffman-Peevler here on behalf of Katie Mitchell, who asked me to speak on her behalf tonight. I have a statement here from her. It says, "Dear members of the Board of Education and Dr. Kowalski, it has come to my attention that Saline Area Schools is contemplating a new set of language that will rescind protective language for trans and gender non-binary students in the district. I really hope this is not the case. As you know, I am Katie Mitchell, a teen advocate and mother of 3 students who matriculated from Saline Area Schools. I cannot be in person tonight as I am having side effects from cancer. But tonight will mark yet another time in the dozens of years I have worked with teens in Saline to implore the board and superintendent to protect all students. Every 3 to 6 years, the same topic comes up. Protection for certain students from bullying and begging for language that supports them, their education, and respects them as our community's beloved children. I first stood before you in 2011 asking for these basic protections to be policy. Here we are, 15 years later, doing the same song and dance. That is at minimum 2 generations of students who knew they had to hope the current board members would see their humanity, their worth, and ability. Please do the right thing and protect our LGBTQ+ students and quit making them ask you to do so. On behalf of Katie, thank you very much.
The last public comment is Sarah Fabian, parent.
My name's Sarah Fabian, and I'm the parent of 2 kids in our district, one at Harvest, one at the middle school. 10 years ago, the Michigan State Board of Education adopted a 9-page statement and guidance on safe and supporting learning environments for LGBTQ students based on a ton of high-quality research and best practices. 5 years after that, our school district adopted its own transgender and non-binary student policy, and my understanding is that this policy was at least partially created with this state guidance in mind. This state guidance has not changed as far as I know. Fast forward to now, 10 years since our state Board of Ed adopted this guidance for people like you all to use when creating school policies. It appears that our district is rescinding its own transgender and non-binary student policy through a process of omission during the transition to Thrun. I can only imagine that the reason for this is to be compliant in advance with the federal government in absence of any actual risk to the district or reason to do so. Despite the federal administration's attempts to erase the existence of these members of our communities, there are still trans and non-binary kids in all of our schools. I know some of them. I love some of them. They are awesome kids. The necessity for having a policy to protect trans and non-binary kids in our district is more dire than ever. The world has quickly become a more dangerous place for these individuals, especially in the last 20 months. I implore those of you elected to uphold what's best for our students and do the right thing. Please protect our most vulnerable students. Please include our district's existing policy on transgender and non-binary students when moving to this new set of school policies.
That would be all the public comments. Response to previous public comment, there's none. Revisions, approval of agenda. Can I have a recommend motion to approve the agenda as printed? So moved. Tim?
I'll support it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, motion carries 6-0. Administration and board committee update. Superintendent update.
Good evening. It has been a busy few weeks since our last meeting, and I realize there's an audience that has concerns tonight, so I am trying to measure remarks while also acknowledging there is a lot of joy and excitement about going back to school. So please understand that that is a balance. Our students are excited to come back, I'm sure, on Monday, August 31st, but right now we are getting ready. For families here or listening tonight, we have many open house opportunities, including this Thursday night for elementary, so we're very excited about that. I'd like to extend a huge thank you to our community for believing in all students and all of the programs we offer through our CARES millage and Sinking Fund millage that were passed by the widest margins of the times that we have went out for those millages. This was a renewal, of course. I again want to say thank you to everyone in the community who got out the word and placed your trust in Saline area schools. These renewals continue to keep critical general funds dedicated to students and in classrooms. Thank you for your investment. Big thanks to the Senior Center. Really enjoyed seeing some of those folks a couple weeks ago at the Mirrors Conference. I was excited to talk to them a little bit about early childhood and our strategic plan, which of course I'll be presenting tonight to the community, and our continuing construction updates. I really enjoyed their follow-up questions. I had a little bit of a line about just all kinds of things from classrooms and programming to curriculum. It was super fun. And while we're not talking about early childhood, of course, I know it seems like over a month ago, but we had Miss Saline and Summerfest congratulating some of those winners and our Hornets, Lily Warren, Delia Delorco, I nailed that, and Elisa Sachativa. I actually have had emails with her, and so that's really exciting that we'll get to work together this year on some of those priorities of those fantastic leaders. Thank you to Paul Heineck and his tireless efforts. Really enjoyed Stuff the Bus as well. Want to also bring, our admin team was there. They did a great job with their booth, and so I know they enjoyed seeing pretty early in August some of the kiddos that are waiting to see all of the educators returning tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. And you can also come visit the Saline Community Fair, where we will be we'll have a presence as well. Some other thank yous I wanted to extend our staff at Pleasant Ridge for the additional cleaning, and our SMS staff for the flexibility and the project finalization of those bond projects. Thank you for all of your patience. They are beautiful spaces, but we need sometimes some extra time to clean them. Appreciated also Sun-Times reporter Heather Finch for coming out and learning more about pathways and getting the word out to our community, and the Hornet Football Club for all of the work that went into that preseason pep rally. It was incredible. I got there around 10:30 thinking I can just slide into a parking spot, and that was not the case. And then lastly, early tomorrow, we will welcome back our staff and all of them to talk about how all means all for Saline area schools. I'm incredibly humbled to serve them and every student in this district, and particularly excited, although I see there's like tornadoes or something in the forecast, so that should be fun, for our outdoor Hornet finale, district finale at Hornet Stadium. I was told by Ms. Davis it was not going to rain, so it won't. For the past 3 weeks, it has been very busy, and go Hornets.
This is an opportunity for general and committee updates and from trustees. I'll just start out real quick. I wanted to mention again the welcome back to our staff tomorrow morning, and I'm hoping to see as many trustees there as possible. And then thanks to all the staff for all their hard work, administration. All you guys have just been putting in a lot of time here as of late, and I appreciate it all. So thank you.
I know Dr. Kowalski will be talking about the strategic plan tonight, and there's a few policy items on the agenda this evening that we will be addressing publicly. So we will just wait for that portion for the policy update.
I have a few things. Last week we had our kind of kickoff meeting for the Foundation for Saline Area Schools. It was the first meeting that I was able to attend with our new Executive Director, Angela Brewski, and our new President, Lindsay Schultz. So looking forward to some really great work from them this year. It is the 40th year of the Foundation, so important conversations will be had this month with historical supporters and planning some really unique and fun events for the year. I was excited to hear that they're moving their grants to an automated system to be a little bit more in line with the rest of the district. Just a reminder to staff that represents a new year and a new pool of money for building or classroom grants, so please take advantage of that. They will also be presenting at the staff welcome back tomorrow. I will be there, Tim, and I'm sure a lot of people will be there. So look forward to seeing all of our staff tomorrow. Their other important dates are the Homecoming Parade on September 25th, the Hall of Fame on October 2nd, the Fall Fundraiser, which will be in the STEM Flex space at the high school this year, which is really exciting, on October 29th. And they are walking again in our holiday parade on December 5th. I also, like Jason, have been busy with policy, but I'll defer to our conversations later in the agenda. And I did want to take the rest of my time to read something from trustee Dr. Lauren Gold, who could not be here today. And so I wanted to read her direct words. I did look into the Open Meetings Act and mentioned this to Tim, and we have done this before, and so it is, I am able to do this under Michigan state law. So these are Lauren's exact words. First of all, I would like to apologize for my absence at tonight's meeting. I make every attempt to attend all meetings. However, my son's college move-in was not flexible. I'd also like to thank Superintendent Kowalski and the team for the extensive work they have done in preparing the committee to review proposed policies. I believe having formal working groups of educators brought invaluable benefit and expertise to the committee's work. I'd also like to recognize Chair Tizides and VP Stebbins' many hours of work on policy. Overall, I have found the transition to TRUM policies to be well thought out and have understood the rationale for the move. I support the adoption of the new policies. However, I believe the new policies leave out valuable considerations. Many issues pertinent to transgender students are covered under broader policy. However, it is my strongly held belief that there are issues specific to this vulnerable group of students. The administrative guidelines that district educators use will guide most of the day-to-day supports for the students. However, I believe a board policy should be in place to make clear the district's commitment to these students. The current legal landscape requires careful review of the current policy, and it is in that vein that Trustee Stebbin and I have worked on new language that we will discuss tonight, and which I will wait for the agenda. Thanks.
And Superintendent Kowalski is going to talk about our new strategic plan in a little bit, but I just wanted to give some background about where that came from. So we had the strategic committee with myself and Trustee Tizides and President Austin. We have met regularly, and we will continue to meet even after the adoption of this plan. We were tasked with reviewing the goals, action steps, and strategies grounding in data and feedback to help share the strategic plan. So this committee was comprised of the superintendent, the board members, district and building administration, and union leaders who provided feedback and insight into our past, current, and future direction. There were a total of 57 engagements with students, staff, families, and community partners built into creating this plan. That engagement began in August of 2025 throughout the community, and listening continued in every corner of the district. And so what you will see tonight traces back to what people actually told us. We surveyed and heard from every employee group, so the teachers, support staff, paraeducators, administrators, and operations teams, and we also have heard from families and students as well. So we did dedicate working sessions specifically with the SEA, SASA, and ESP, and that plan was then created with the stakeholder voices and student data. And I just want to affirm again that the work is ongoing. There will be quarterly progress updates, continuous monitoring, and iterative refinement to keep the plan responsive and impactful. So you will hear from us in future meetings. And again, thank you, Superintendent Kowalski and President Austin and Trustee Tizides for their work.
Thanks, Darcy. This afternoon, the Finance Committee met to review the latest budget numbers from Assistant Superintendent Owsley. She also reported that the audit is well underway, and the auditors from Plant Moran have been physically with us in Liberty this week and will be here next week as well. This is accounting speak. So far, our accounting methods are in line with expectations, which is a very good thing. Also, we discussed the recommended administrative regulations for the CARES Committee, developed with Director of Community Ed, Brian Puffer, and we do have a few modifications to share with Community Ed. August 10th, I was delighted to join President Austin, Secretary Berwick, and Superintendent Kowalski at Weber Bless to meet many of our newest hires and to drive around Saline a bit in our brand new electric buses. If you've never been on those, they're a treat to be on. In addition, Rex shared some really interesting safety features, which I'm not sure are exactly public, but they are absolutely wonderful, and they will keep our students safe. On August 15th, I also joined many of you at the football pep rally. Thanks for the reminder, Nate. And got to see the cheer team in action, see the coaching staff working with the teams, and we also got to hear the marching band. I heard from a couple of parents. One parent was torn. Her kid was torn with whether he wanted to be on the football team or the band, and I believe he chose the band. I also heard from another parent who specifically wanted me to share with this board that she is wildly in favor of the new smartphone policy that we adopted, and gives us all credit for that. So I just wanted to pass that along. Thank you. That's my report.
Not a whole lot of updates on the athletic committee. We had a difficult August, so we're going to get that on the schedule for September. Lots of exciting stuff with the fall sports kicking off. Football team spent the entire summer practicing, making trips out to Grand Valley for their summer camp, 2 days for 2 weeks, lots of nagging injuries, and got some well-needed rest, and they're going to open up with Rockford this Friday night at Hornet Stadium. So that'll be an exciting night for all participants, the band, the cheer, the dance team, student body. It's going to kind of be a unique evening where we have a football game before school starts. So that'll be a fun dynamic. Hope to see everybody out there, and that's the updates from the athletic committee.
Thank you. We will go into the public hearing. Policy 5207, anti-bullying policy. Facilitator is Jason Tisdees.
Thank you, President Austin. I will go ahead and read the entire policy. Is that what we want to do? Go through the entire policy? Yes? Okay. Okay, so the anti-bullying policy requires two public readings. This will be the first of such readings. This is policy 5207. All types of bullying, including cyberbullying, without regard to subject matter or motivating animus, are prohibited. In Section A, the prohibited conduct, bullying, including cyberbullying, a student at school is prohibited. Bullying in any written, verbal, or physical act or electronic communication that is intended to or that a reasonable person would know is likely to harm one or more students directly or indirectly by doing any of the following: substantially interfering with a student's educational opportunities, benefits, or programs, adversely affecting a student's ability to participate in or benefit from the district's educational programs or activities by placing the student in a reasonable fear of physical harm or by causing substantial emotional distress, having an actual or substantial detrimental effect on the student's physical or mental health, causing substantial disruption in or substantial interference with the district's orderly operations. Retaliation or false accusations against the target of bullying, anyone reporting bullying, a witness, or another person with reliable information about an act of bullying are prohibited. In Section B, reporting an incident, if a student, staff member, or other person suspects there has been a bullying incident, the person must promptly report the incident to the building principal or designee or to the responsible school officials as defined below. A report may be made in person, by telephone, or in writing, including electronic transmissions. If a bullying incident is reported to a staff member who is not the building principal, designee, or a responsible school official, the staff member must promptly report the incident to the building principal, designee, or a responsible school official. To encourage reporting of suspected bullying or related activities, each building principal, after consulting the responsible school officials, will create, publicize, and implement a system for anonymous reports. The system must emphasize that the district's ability to investigate anonymous reports may be limited. Complaints that the building principal has bullied a student must be reported to the superintendent. Complaints that the superintendent has bullied a student must be reported to the board president. In Section C, under investigation, all bullying complaints will be promptly investigated. The building principal or designee will conduct the investigation unless the building principal or superintendent is the subject of the investigation. If the building principal is the subject of the investigation, the superintendent or designee will conduct the investigation. If the superintendent is the subject of the investigation, the board president the board president will designate a neutral party to conduct the investigation. A description of each reported incident, along with all investigative materials and conclusions reached, will be documented and retained. Section D, notice to parent or guardian. If the investigator determines that a bullying incident has occurred, the district will promptly notify the victims and perpetrators, parent or guardian, in writing. Section E, annual reports. At least annually, the building principals or designee or the responsible school official must report all verified bullying incidents and the resulting consequences, including any disciplinary action or referrals to the board. The district will annually report incidents of bullying to the MDE, Michigan Department of Education, in the form and manner prescribed by the MDE. In Section F, responsible school official, the superintendent is the responsible school official for this policy and is responsible for ensuring that this policy is properly implemented. This appointment does not reduce or eliminate the duties and responsibilities of the building principal or designee as described in this policy. Section G, posting and publication of the policy. The superintendent or designee will ensure that this policy is available on the district's website and incorporated into student handbooks and other relevant school publications. The superintendent or designee will submit this policy to the MDE within 30 days after its adoption. In section H, definitions, at school means a classroom, elsewhere on school premises, on a school bus, or other school-related vehicle, or at a school-sponsored activity or event, whether it is held on school premises. At school also includes any conduct using a telecommunications access device or telecommunications services provider that occurs off school premises if the device or provider is owned by or under the control of the district. Telecommunications access device means any of the following: any instrument, device, card, plate, code, telephone number, account number, personal identification number, electronic serial number, mobile identification number, counterfeit number, or financial transaction device defined in MCL 750.157M. An electronic funds transfer card, a credit card, a debit card, a point of sale card, any other instrument or means of access to a credit, deposit, or proprietary account. That alone or with another device can acquire, transmit, intercept, provide, receive, use, or otherwise facilitate the use, acquisition, interception, provision, reception, and transmission of any telecommunication services, or any type of instrument, device, machine, equipment, technology, or software that facilitates telecommunications, or which is capable of transmitting, acquiring, intercepting, decrypting, or receiving any telephonic, electronic data, internet access, audio, video, microwave, or radio transmissions, signals, telecommunications, or services, including the receipt, acquisition, interception, transmission, retransmission, or decryption of all telecommunications, transmissions, signals, or services provided by or through any cable television, fiber optic, telephone, satellite, microwave, data transmission, radio, internet-based or wireless distribution network, system or facility, or any part, accessory, or component, including any computer circuit, security module, smart card, software, computer chip, pager, cellular telephone, personal communications device, transponder, receiver, modem, electronic mechanism, or other component, accessory, or part of any other device that is capable or facilitating the interception, transmission, retransmission, decryption, acquisition, or reception of any telecommunications transmission signals or services. Please let me take a drink. Okay, telecommunications service provider means any of the following: a person or entity providing a telecommunications service, whether directly or indirectly, as a reseller, including but not limited to a cellular, paging, or other wireless communications company, or other person or entity which, for a fee, supplies the facility, cell site, mobile telephone, switching office, or other equipment or telecommunication service. A person or entity owning or operating any fiber optic, cable television, satellite, internet-based, telephone, wireless, microwave, data transmission, or radio distribution system, network, or facility, or a person or entity providing any telecommunication services directly or indirectly by or through any distribution system, networks, or facilities. All the legal authority is found in MCL 3801310B, MCL 75017 and 750219A.
Thank you, Jason.
Please don't make me do that. Thank you. That was the conclusion. Yes. I'm sorry.
I just wanted to make a couple comments, and I think I'm going to reserve the rest of my comments for action item A. That is in the board packet that's on the public website in case anyone wants to read that if they didn't catch what Jason said. And I do want to point out that in committee, when we were discussing current policy 5517.02, which is our transgender and non-binary students policy, this policy did come up as one potential avenue for some integration or merging of themes. That is one thing that did come up. So I'll reserve the rest of my comments for action item A.
Any other comments regarding that?
May I, just some clarification, are we offering any changes or recommended slight edits to this policy, or are we just leaving it up for a vote the next meeting, second hearing?
Currently, what is presented to the board is what the policy committee has recommended. So as written, that is where it is right now, but as Vice President Stebbin had mentioned, this is one of the policies that was lifted up as potentially being able to house portions of other policies to be more inclusive.
That's great. Could I raise a couple of questions then? In section B, reporting an incident, there was one interesting email that came to us where it's suggested that a person must promptly report. Our older policy was a person should promptly report. And the suggestion was that some students who are being bullied might be hesitant to approach right away. So the promptness aspect of it might be challenged. Was that language, the word must versus should, discussed by the committee? I was curious to see that change.
I would be working only off of memory on this. This is not referring to a student being bullied making the report. It is another person that witnessed or is aware of the bullying must make the report. I'm not sure if we consider the difference between must and should there. I think outside of a student, a staff member, or other responsible person, I would really hope would take the initiative to report any bullying that they have witnessed. But I'm unsure if we toggled between should and must.
I appreciate that.
Just to respond, as we would operationalize this is actually stronger language. It's under B, reporting an incident. So I think that was intentional for the individuals aware of it.
Thank you for that clarification, and the person who emailed might appreciate that clarification as well. Under annual reports, E, at least annually, the building principal or designee must report all verified bullying incidents. A couple of things. So is it necessary, do you think, to add a date or a recommended date? The end of the academic year or over August, perhaps?
That report is an annual MDE report that would be reported to the state at the same time every year, which is the spring.
So it made it look like this was something that you were just going to do. You're reporting the incidents to the board. So this will happen. When does the MDE usually expect their report?
June 30th of every year.
All right, so that we should then expect, as part of our cadence of activities and our plan, to have a report before then. All right, great. I may have one more question. I heard a couple giggles while Jason went on at great length about the telecommunication access device. This is really important, especially when it comes to cyberbullying. People would find loopholes and figure out ways around policies. Well, it didn't happen on school. I did it at home on my blog or whatever. I appreciate the great care that the law firm has taken to make sure that every possible telecommunication device was covered here. The only we're missing Ouija boards, but other than that, that's pretty good. Thank you. I don't really have any more questions, and I'm ready to say I'm okay with this.
Okay, no other questions? Okay, that'll be our first reading. Presentation, the 2026 to 2032 Strategic Plan and Recalibrated Compass. Superintendent Dr. Kowalski, Rachel Kowalski.
Okay, I'm excited. Good evening, trustees, community members. And thank you for all of the work that has gone into this and your partnership on this work. Now, tonight is primarily about the strategic plan. But in that business is what's in front of you as an action item to approve. But I cannot tell you the story of the plan without starting with our recalibrated compass, because a compass points you towards goals and outcomes. With our prior compass and framework, we had good work going on, good folks doing great work with kids. But this recalibrated compass will help us navigate further. It has been recalibrated for today's travelers. You will get no shortage of navigational terms tonight, I promise. I had to edit some out even. It points from an honest start toward a destination that we've crafted as a community together. So let me introduce the strategic plan by name. All learners, many pathways, one compass. But before we start, here is kind of where we're headed tonight. A vision worth unpacking. So tonight I'm going to tell you where the plan came from for those of you in the Strategic Planning Committee, and for many of you who've been part of this, you know a little bit about where we've developed these metrics and our goals from. I'm going to talk about why it belongs to our community and not to me, and also not to a consultant, and how we intend to live into it every day. I want you to hear about, though, the questions and how we answer them through some data, and that was through listening and what our children need as part of the gaps we've identified. So every goal in this plan is going to help answer those questions. So I first want to talk about how we built it, and I've got some data here to allude to, yes, the 57 documented engagements. A lot of this started late last summer and early in the fall. We hosted many events. We spent time in every building, students, staff, so all groups of staff, and compiling trends and overall qualitative data. A lot of it was classroom visits, student groups that I was able to hear from. Those also were part of the 57 engagements. And they told us what school felt like, what some of the challenges were, what some of the inequities were. And we also, of course, documented the many PTA visits that we also had an opportunity to collect data from. So when the committee formed in the winter, it was great to begin taking some of the high-level synthesized data to you at that point, but then it was equally important to bring our labor partners to the table. We did so through Q&A sessions, where we focus on culture, climate, what was working and what was not. So those are some data points about the journey. And those are, whoops, it's not working, there we go. Those are just some of the examples of the actual public and some public things that we did together, some of the groups that we met with together as well, and the big unveil. So in 2016, our district built its first compass. It was our learner profile. It named who an SAS graduate was becoming, and it gave us an entire decade of work, really deep in the work of the shared direction of what we were producing as learners. It was good, it was true, and it served us very well. This year, our community is going to get excited about a recalibrated compass, and I'll talk a little bit about how that came to be, that will help us ignite purpose, explore possibilities, embrace challenges, and build connections. And under that are 16 promises that we make as part of those directions. As the plan begins, the old strategic framework we were using also retires. And also additionally, for those of you familiar with MyKIP, this is our MyKIP plan. So we're not developing two separate avenues of goals. It all lives under one umbrella. So you can see our first compass that served us well. And by the way, I'm previewing, will not be just like taken down off the wall, like right as I'm leaving, right? We're not doing that. I'll talk a little bit about that. That's important. But a recalibrated compass that will help us to our new destinations. So you weren't going to get out of this. I'll be sharing this in our welcome back tomorrow. I want to pause because believe it or not, I used to be a teacher before I was a superintendent. There's some days I like teaching history and social studies, and And I think, some of our social studies teachers maybe would invite me in. Maybe, I think Brandon has once, but we'll see how AP Government goes this year. But here are some examples of compasses from the past. And it really struck me that as a former history teacher, we do look to how there were previous versions of things in previous compasses. So these were some of my favorites. I particularly liked the torpedo one in the middle. None of these compasses were wrong, however. And they got us to great destinations already. At this point, I'm going to have to reload this, so sorry. I'll let you take in the compasses. Okay. Did you get enough compasses? All right. So when this original work on the compass was presented to me very quickly after joining your district as your superintendent, the group that had worked on this presented to me the directions. So this again was a working framework, and it helped to clarify the directions of the compass. So again, the ignite purpose, embrace challenges, build connections, and embrace challenges, build connections. Didn't want to get that wrong. Accompanied by 4 values holding it all together: integrity, curiosity, growth, and community. And I'll pause on the values. So we have intentionally chosen to launch our strategic plan through these directions, and we will be doing work with our core values. It's just we can only layer so much, right? So I think it was really important that a group came together, created a framework, and what was more important was this bigger question of, first couple weeks, am I really going to see this play out in these classrooms, or am I going to see some maybe old version of what we're doing 2016, 2017? And it really did strike me that as I started visiting classrooms, working with staff, that I was seeing a lot of these things. On a daily basis, I see Saline Area School students embrace challenge, be resilient, sometimes have to build those skills to do that. I see staff who are igniting purpose, but then also some barriers to what that is. So it was really important to take this, but pause. So purposefully in this room, and to you all and to our staff, I've talked about pausing on purpose to ensure that we had not only a compass, but somewhere for the compass to take us. So tonight, I simply wanted to give you the background on where the framework came from. It was from a lot of voices, and it got us to the point where we could use that to build a strategic plan. So the compass is recalibrated and not replaced. The compass is still our learner profile, and what's exciting about this is we're able to, through a strategic plan, talk about how the compass serves adults as well. So how we can, as staff members, when we deal with retention issues and we deal with some barriers to ensuring that we're fully staffed and we're staffed with the best people, for example, how we lead and how we work through that through the lens of the compass. Now, again, I want to be clear about one thing before we keep moving to the strategic plan. Because we are fiscally responsible stewards of our community's resources, the compass that are currently on walls, on posters, and hallways over the district are not going to be ripped down. So again, similar to me showing you the old compasses through the lens of remembering what it was to teach history, those things do matter. And so we will be replacing things as we need to and follow a conservative approach to that because we are navigators and we're always going to run into instruments of the past. Okay, so now on to the plan. I'm going to preview the 16 promises. There are 4 under each direction. I know it's hard to see. We'll get this up tonight, this presentation on our website. So without further ado, I'm going to preview those 16 promises, and we'll talk about the data behind them. Again, every single one of them begins the same way. That was from the committee, so that was an edit that was made really recently, that we will do these things. Saline Area Schools, we will do these things on the screen, and there's metrics that live under each one. I wanted you to start with the end in mind here as I kind of talk about the data that lives under each of these. So here is what makes the plan different from anything that we've been before. We had a strategic framework that helped us move through projects, and we had a learner profile that has served us incredibly well. And those things helped us. But this plan connects both. Every promise has metrics underneath, what we will move, by how much, by when, and the actions we will take to move it. One housekeeping note that's super fun, speaking of MDE, they'll come up again. I wanted to share out loud is that the state released new scores yesterday at 10 a.m. And despite Herculean efforts to attempt to revise some of these things and make sure that it was out there, those numbers are not in the final document. So for now, this is going to be posted, and then we'll move those metrics because they were embargoed. Until then, you'll have the presentation to help guide conversations. And this is also setting expectations. We're not supposed to memorize the 16 promises on the way out the door. So there will not be a quiz, and we'll continue to dive into these and make meaning out of them together. But before any data goes up, I wanted to say about how we will approach this. When we say all learners, we mean every single one. All learners, all means all. So you're gonna see some gaps tonight on these slides from some of our student groups. And that's what separates a strategic plan from a wish list. We have clear baselines, clear metrics, honest metrics, and then the discipline built into the plan to track our movement. Saline Area Schools is a high-performing district. That is precisely why these numbers deserve our attention. About 95% of our students graduate in 4 years. That is impressive. But below that, our subgroups do not graduate the same rate. Additionally, if you look at high school, these are again just some of the gaps that are named in our plan, only 53% of juniors meet the SAT math benchmark. It is very stagnant for subgroups, as you can imagine. Already discussed in previous meetings, we are currently still standing at 13.2% chronic absenteeism rate, and again, that data was released yesterday, so we will get you that new number. So as you think about those things, on the next slide, again, the updated plan, and I've kind of listed some trends on the right-hand side, will be posted for you to see some of these. But I want you to just see examples of how we carry strong results across the board, but we do have gaps for many of our students. We see in elementary, we have a gender gap for mathematics. In grades 4 and 5, we do start seeing some really deep gaps for economically disadvantaged students, and our students with disabilities are about 40 points behind their classmates. So this is the honest picture, and this is how we began to build the plan, as part of building the plan. The gap actually opens in elementary school and does not disappear by high school. And this is our early childhood conversation that we've been having for a year. Our systems spend years shrinking a gap that arrived at the front door many times. And we have been fixing it as we pile up towards the exit. But that has been the wrong end. So we need to continue to focus on early childhood. That is a big piece of this plan, pre-K all the way through grade 12 and beyond. So you can see how some of those gaps are tracked during elementary school. Economically disadvantaged students, there's also some markers with SAT math, as I referenced before. We do see some correlation with parental education, which does, by MDE standards, relate to economically disadvantaged in some of their metrics. Here is one that stopped me in my tracks. Students who tested on only the school day, meaning that was the day they could have the SAT, met the benchmark at only 37%. And so students who have the ability to test on the weekend met it at 92. And that was our last cohort. That was our last cohort, but the trend is there. Okay, so there's some data that started helping us to form some of our promises, but additionally, it was really important to get community input as well, so that's the second part of this. The last thing here was I wanted to show you how some of the underneath the promises lies the smaller goals and metrics and key moves, but how we actually converge these things into goals. So it wasn't just someone at one of the 57 engagements said, we should, I'm trying to think of something, we should have red textbooks, just like red and purple textbooks because they're really pretty colors. And that was said at one engagement. It wasn't, I'm just making that up. But it wasn't just that there was input and then we converged it into a big plan. We had to triangulate some of this data. So this was one example that you've actually kind of heard a little bit already. One is our college board. So, one is our AP and pre-AP initiatives. So you can kind of see how the community input as well as some of the named gaps and data that we have to suggest that we could be having more students who are AP ready in AP classes. The second example I walk you through to triangulate was our people. So this is from, I believe, Build Connections. We had a lot of that qualitative input from our labor partners. They talked about retention. They talked a lot about retention, and we've talked about metrics that are related to retention. But then the data is there to suggest that we have some opportunities in certain areas. So I just wanted to walk you through, and again, we'll make this available on our website, that you can kind of see how those sources converge into a goal. And this also walks you through some examples from our survey. Sorry. So this does a really good job of kind of showing some themes and how qualitative and quantitative data come together to converge those themes. I think clarity and initiative overload was one that came up in many different sources. That actually came from all stakeholders in our final strategic planning survey as well. And so those things, again, as we continued to take the data, layer it on top of each other, became goals within the plan. And as you might have seen recently, we tried to check our work at the end. That last survey was not intended to be a be-all and end-all to get survey data. We actually used some of our data from K-12 from last spring. We used professional learning survey for some of the staff things. We do actually have a lot of survey data and trends to work with. So that was really our attempt to make sure it was out there. And boy, we were spot on. So on this slide, and I present this to the committee as well, through that survey, we saw some of the things that folks praised about the our district, some things they would want to change, and some things they'd want to see added or I guess continue to be a priority. On this screen, you can see some of the themes, and what was really nice is the tool that we're using. We have a new tool called Panorama, and it does really amazing work. It took some of even the short answer questions, and it aggregates it into themes. So it takes the themes that were from the multiple choice questions we asked, and then it also aggregated some of the themes into big picture. And then you can even see on that slide, I went through, I didn't put parentheses on some of them, sorry, but you can see sort of some of the connections to our 16 promises. So again, this is the same slide as before, but I did like a little preview here to say behind every one of these is a year of listening, is student data that's going to be updated to make sure we have trends. And so now, for the last part of this, I'd like to walk you through each direction, and I've intentionally chosen one or two examples to show you because, again, to present the whole plan, we'd be here a while. I'd be reading it like Chair Tizides did earlier. I don't know if you want that. Oh, one more. So as I mentioned, I think that's out of place, but the 4 directions of our recalibrated compass live at the top of the plan, and those are the big picture promises. And then under each of the promises, you find kind of working goals that are connected with a metric, and then key research-based moves that will help us carry forward the metrics. Also, you're seeing on some of these slides that it says June 2032. Some of the metrics, it's too much to put them on these slides, but you will have check-in points along the way. But some metrics take longer to move, so you might have like a midpoint and then the 2032 metric. These were some of the, take the first one on here. So I think I've already referenced this. This is our mathematics gap for learners with disabilities. This is a 29% gap for mathematics, and this is aggregated across the district. So we've given the goal of 54% to move that up. These are SMART goals, are based on best practices in creating SMART goals. So by June 2032, we hope that this will begin to close. And the idea of all of these metrics is that we close the gaps so they're less than double digits, and ideally, is, you know, the equity work that we do in our careers, like they get to 0. They don't often, but in my mind, they have to be single digits. A lot of these, I want to acknowledge, were lifted straight out of rooms with folks we collaborated with, like the DEIC, SEAC, and many of the PTOs, PTAs, parent groups, and countless staff visits that we had during this journey. Okay, so again, brief overview of our 4 directions. So these are some examples of goals and metrics that go with North, Ignite, Purpose. I have in my notes here to intentionally just pause for a second, probably to catch a breath, but also to just let the audience and then our viewers at home to look at it real quick. So a quick reminder as we travel through these 4 directions and get a little taste of what our plan entails, that we will be posting this on our website, and then the final full PDF or the ADA compliant version will be posted once those metrics from this year are updated into the data from MDE. So from the north, you can see our 4 directions, again, aggregated data coming together under the idea of igniting purpose. So it reads, from the north, every learner leaves SAS inspired with a next step that is theirs, a real choice, not a default. And one for our adults. We will invest in igniting purpose and collective efficacy of every educator because students do not reach their purpose in rooms led by adults who have lost theirs. And here are some metrics to move. I have 2 slides. I'm going to choose one from each one. One that was really exciting and that's gained some momentum over the summer is by 2030, it will become a professional learning community district. Oh, sorry. I was doing pretty good until then. Today, we certainly have highly effective teams and data that actually is demonstrative of that. But we would like to see by 2030, every team and every building operate under a PLC framework and the 4 questions to support whole team approaches to student learning. I also wanted to mention, and maybe you might remember from more than a year ago, PLCs were my dissertation, and PLCs also produce high levels of staff well-being, and collective efficacy is a big piece of that as well, according to research. And a second example from the north. We heard this a lot from some of the parent surveys. This actually kind of appeared in some of the perception data as well. We'll honor all pathways, trades, military, college, and career, and then added a signing day. So currently, I think we're doing a signing day for some athletics, and we will be doing one, as the high school team knows, next year for every pathway in Saline High School and Liberty. We'll encourage also stacking pathways. So kiddos that, they're not kiddos, they are academic scholars by that point, stacking potential multiple pathways on top of one another, because you can absolutely get ready to go to a 4-year college, an Ivy League even, and you can also carry credentials in other aspects of your post-secondary pathway. So this is the north, and now on to the east, where possibility is widened. So again, here are some examples of goals and metrics from East Explore Possibilities. We will encourage creativity, curiosity, and exploration, providing opportunities to innovate, solve problems, and expand horizons. We nurture a culture of discovery that inspires individuals to imagine and create a better future. And so there's 2 promises to hold from this direction that I want to talk about. And those are, we'll advance equity and access for every learner, and every program and every path genuinely reachable. I think I got that edit correctly, but if I didn't, we'll make sure it's fixed. I think I ran the slide, but not here. We will also open viable pathways from early childhood to adulthood, with early childhood as the front door to Saline area schools. So again, like I said, I just tried to go through and grab a diverse group of some of these metrics and make sure the data was updated for these from MDE before we move forward. So the first one I want to highlight on the east, examples metrics to move. is we will review our device model. So this comes from This is E1. This is one I changed today. And review our device model through a lens of equity and access and publish a deliberate model by grade band. Today, we have BYOD as a practice in our district, but we have a lot of things changing this conversation, such as artificial intelligence, advanced technology, changing what the device is for. I know conversations at this table have centered around some changing lens of which we use devices pre-K through 12 and beyond. This came up a lot with our parents, which is why it made it into one of the examples. It was aggregated from a lot of the qualitative data we got from parents. The survey then at the end spoke to this as well. So this is an actual goal that we would publish what this looks like until 2030 and then be agile enough to adapt it as well. So that's one example from Explore Possibilities, exploring the possibility of doing things different based on the current research. Another example from East is our commitment to early childhood that lives here right here in the East in Possibilities. We will meet early childhood demand with seats and grow participation as the front door to the district. Today, as we all know, because we're excited about what's happening very soon for our district and our early childhood program, demand exceeds our supply. By 2029, we'd hope to meet demand and participation of our early childhood programs by 100, double it. We'd like to double it. And we'd like to make it the front door for every family. We've talked a lot about some of the reasons behind some of the expansion of early childhood that we've made into a new building. Our data tells us that the gaps do walk out of the kindergarten doors, and then we continue to try to keep up with some of those gaps. So early intervention is key here, and early making sure that we're accelerating kids as well. So if we have students in our early childhood center that we identify early on is able to be accelerated, that information is really valuable to our families and to the district. Now on to the south, where belonging is built. So we are Saline Area Schools. We prioritize building strong, inclusive relationships that foster collaboration and belonging. We create opportunities for meaningful interaction, empowering individuals to form connections that uplift and unite communities. We will create the conditions for every member of this learning community to be known and to belong, students and staff alike, and we will grow our people through tracking retention, development of people, and visible and accessible leadership pipelines. So here's some examples of metrics to move. You'll see in Build Connections a lot of, again, these are just examples, but you'll see a lot of the work that we're doing with SEL, SEBH, and MTSS interventions. One of the examples I wanted to pull out was, thank you to Julie Volkler and Kim Jasper, who've done a lot of work in identifying areas of need for data with student discipline. So thank you for that work. And so one of the goals, and we'll use the metric to measure it, we'll track discipline risk ratios by student group, review them twice a year with our leaders, and then if necessary beyond that, leadership teams, and decrease disparities every year until the gap is closed. Today, some of our student groups are suspended at multiple rates of their peers. We have to have honest tracking here that isn't an MD report at the end of the year, and it takes real systems work to do this. And so this is what I wanted to carry forward as an example of the work we'll be doing here. This goal also, if you, when we publish our new plan, you'll also see there is a seclusion restraint metric as well that we'll include here as well, because those data points are also important for us to understand when children are struggling. I'm going to take another quick break while I figure out how to fix this. Apologize. The Strategic Planning Committee got a whole hour of this. Okay. So the second example for Build Connections, again, aligned with a lot of staff feedback that we were tracking all year. None of this was by name, by the way. Like we took big picture things that were lifted in these, and they went into a qualitative document, just like a qualitative researcher would do. We will implement key moves for each of these. And so one of the examples is to decrease non-retirement departures, which is an important signal. If you look at some white papers in the world of human resources, is a good metric to follow. We will also track special education staff departures and track factors in terms of the building and the role in that space. And actually, I think that's the first thing we've identified for the Strategic Planning Committee to dive into, if I'm not mistaken, in September. So I guess I'd break right here. It's kind of at the end, but alluding to, like, this work doesn't end with, like, the Strategic Planning Committee. Every month we meet to look at these metrics and decide how this will align with our board presentations. So you'll begin hearing things differently. Like if we're going to have a special education update or if we're going to have a bond update, you'll begin hearing that through the lens of our recalibrated compass and strategic plan. So it's all connected together and coherent. And lastly, on to the West. Embrace challenges. And what did I say as the history teacher, Emmy, when we renamed this West? That the frontier offered its own challenges. And so the West needed to be embrace challenges. I could teach all kinds of history lessons here, but that would be boring. All right, we equip learners and staff with the tools to persevere through adversity and grow stronger. By creating supportive environments, we help individuals build confidence and resilience for lifelong success. So again, all means all. This is students and staff, which is an exciting aspect of our recalibrated compass and plan. That's the West, and so please take a moment to just peruse those four. Closing gaps, the data are that are addressed in our data is a big piece of this area. A guaranteed and viable curriculum in every classroom for all students is also something we've made a lot of progress in, but we have some work to do. Every student, every staff member are present and supported. So you'll actually find that we're tracking not only student attendance data in this area, but we are tracking staff as well as a metric. And again, the honest stewardship of our financial resources that this community has entrusted to all of us. So the West also has numbers attached. The challenge that I want to highlight here is this one was actually just, there's some metrics that are specific groups and specific sets of data. This one is very general because it's an overarching challenge for us that we will reduce the proficiency gap. And note I said proficiency. So it is our duty to ensure all students can reach grade level proficiency by the time they graduate. That is the center of what we do every day. And so that is one of the ones I wanted to highlight under this goal. Underneath that headline, though, does obviously sit some of the gaps that I've already alluded to, and there are some gaps that are in different areas of the plan as well, depending on the lens of which we're approaching that work. So one more from the West, and I want you to hear where it came from, because there are many examples also in this work as well. Whoops, no, we're not there yet. This one actually came directly as a suggestion from our DEIAC work, so I wanted to lift it, and you will find other ones as well that were directly moved into the strategic plan. I want to, again, thank that group, just like I did in May, and the many groups we met with for helping us with this work. So this one names, it will include culturally responsive teaching and universal UDL, Universal Design for Learning, in every curriculum review, and with our reorganized teaching and learning department, we have the ability to also put this and name this in our coaching plans. So I wanted to point that out, but there are other examples as well on there. That completes my overview of the 4 directions of the compass. So what's next? I've already alluded a little bit to that. You can begin to anticipate from Chair Berwick and our other committee members and myself that we'll be lifting the current work and the metrics that we're looking at. We're going to also be agile enough to say this is a living document, and let every superintendent presenting a strategic plan saying it's a living document, but I had to say it. but because it's true, we have to be agile enough to understand that data and information give us what we need to move forward. And I just want to say again that this is not getting rid of a compass that has served us for 10 years. It truly is connecting this tool that we use to keep us in our North Star, and it's helping us move these metrics and naming which ones we're going to move and having those goalposts and holding me accountable to that so that I can hold all of us accountable to that. So each summer, you'll continue to see building plans and superintendent goals. I'm lucky to say that mine already do align to this plan, but next year we'll do that work together with this team, with part of this team. And so tonight is not about the finish line. This is definitely not like a, whew, I'm done. Although I'm really glad to have this like out in the open. But it brings us back tonight to the idea that we are all Hornets. I thought I put my all means all thing on here, but I must have missed that cleanup. Go Hornets, and I appreciate your time. Did pretty good. And of course, any questions and feedback.
Thank you, Rachel. Any feedback or questions?
My feedback would be I really like the metrics where you're holding yourself accountable with very specific numbers and percentages, like the math. That kind of jumped out at me that I was really kind of shocked that our scores we had that percentage below average. And the fact that you've raised that bar, I can promise you it's going to be significantly higher than 53% next year.
I just wanted to again thank you for the work that you and your team and everyone has put in, including families and staff. The details and how well thought out it is, I think is that clarity will let us move forward and adjust as needed, and I appreciate that accountability. Thank you.
Well, we'll be quick because your computer's going to update at 8:09. That's what it says.
That's not mine.
Oh, that's not yours. Okay, cool. We'll keep going.
But that could be problematic for whose it is.
There you go. Yeah, I hate those managed updates. So thank you. I'm not surprised at the level of comprehensiveness here, considering your interview and the booklet that we got. So I'm recalling some of those. I really like, so I'm not on this committee, so the draft and the presentation is newer to me. Some specific things that I liked a lot of it, but some pop-outs, I guess I would say. I loved the culture pulse checks. I think that that's so important. PLCs, so professional learning communities, and leveraging the expertise on our staff. I love universal design for learning and the number of ties that you brought back to our DEIAC. I liked that we were, the committee and the working groups, were honest with discussing some challenges and attacking them boldly. I think that reinforces some of the revised compass. And I had just a couple of questions. So you listed a few examples. For example, on your slide, you'll say, embrace challenges, examples of metrics to move. Mm-hmm. And I liked having like 4 per. Where do all of them live? So to Nate's point about accountability and being able to come back to metrics, where does your complete list live?
So what I'm referring to when I'm saying we're going to publish the PDF is really the finalized goals with the metrics. There are the key moves that will layer in administrative world, because those are really kind of what we're doing as part of the operational pieces of the district. But the intent is to update some of the many of the MDE pieces that came out yesterday morning, because now they're public. Mm-hmm. And then that document is sitting around 40 some pages right now, but I'm also trying to clean that up a bit. And I think too, can I extend the question by, like, it is comprehensive, and I want to set expectations that there's no, like, this isn't just going to click overnight, right? Yeah. A lot of the intentionality is actually that we're naming these things as opportunities to dig in from 2026 to 2032.
Great. On slide 43, second to the last, you talk about step 2 in the board and monitoring. So how often do you expect that progress reports might come to us?
So I actually expect them to be monthly, and here's why. What I'd like to do, and we'll be working as a group I'm thinking the strategic planning committee will likely bring this to the full board and get some feedback, is traditionally, and this is in many districts, I've done this in my previous district as superintendent, like we're gonna do the finance update this month, then we're going to do the teaching and learning update this month, then I'm looking at my core team, and the human resources update this month, and then bond updates every other month. I think that's coming in September, actually. But actually taking the compass and like saying, these are the areas we're working on here. And so you're going to hear from Kara, Rex, and 2 teacher leaders tonight about this promise. Mm-hmm. And so I think it's a little bit of a shift, and one that I fully anticipate will take time. But I think the strategic planning committee, once we kind of dig in, that will become very natural. And again, not like less than this is your month to present, but more so how are we moving these metrics as a group, as a team, not just the core team, not just our admin team, not just the board, but the people who are literally moving the metrics on the ground. And that is my hope and my prayer, that those will be through that lens and they will involve multiple people presenting.
Great. Sorry, I just have a couple more little comments. How is AI specifically or not a piece of this overall? And that's like, you don't have to get into the details, like 50,000 foot view.
So if someone wants to borrow the language from me, it reads, embrace artificial intelligence and advanced technology through the lens of exploration and guardrails. I'm pretty close. And that is exactly why I think you're asking that question. Mm-hmm. Because every time we all open our email, you, anyone in this audience, our kids, there's a new update on what AI tools are out there. And so if I had this unveiling of like 5 goals under there with the metrics for AI, you should pay me like $1 billion, because I don't think anyone can tell us that, and hence the living document piece of that.
Okay. I think I'm going to hold on some of this other stuff for some conversations, because it would be good to just brainstorm and go back and forth on. Thanks.
Yeah, and feel free to also give it to the strategic planning committee and we can consider, and thank you for your comments.
I'm glad that this particular set of metrics was such a prominent piece of the presentation. The family resources it predicts outcomes was a huge set of data when we sat down in the strategic planning committee. And one of the ones that really caught me, and you highlighted in here, was the spread in SAT scores. I thought that was very interesting when we discussed that in the strategic planning committee. Can you easily explain that to the community? Because this is a huge one, and this really shows the difference between economically disadvantaged students in our district and an easy thing that we can figure out to help them. Can you just talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, I've had a lot of listening and learning, but also just honestly discovery in the last 12 months. So one of those was, I don't know how much we have been using with our high school students, the waivers that are available, and then empowering our staff to make sure those are in their hands. And that is a tool that is given to us for free. We don't have to pay for that, actually. We just need to make sure the right people have the right information with the right kids. So that's one aspect, is many of those students already have waivers available to them. We just haven't been following up on using those. So that's an easy fix. That's the easy fix. And we had a community member actually reach out over the weekend. I mean, like, how exciting to get a great communication like that, talking about SAT Saturday days, because you have to drive elsewhere. You have to get the hotel room, you have to do the gas and all the things. And some families, whether they're working or they have multiple competing priorities, and sometimes for economically disadvantaged families, that could be them, they can't get to those. And then lastly on that is that contributing to that also is that students test, I mean, this is like widely known research, best in the environments where they go to school. And so when some of our students do choose and they have the resources to go off and do that, that's still like a dynamic that I'd like to continue exploring. And if you thought of anything I didn't say from the Strategic Planning Committee or your own knowledge, please remind me, because we have not mentioned it.
Well, thank you. And all your hard work and your teams. Thank you. Okay, we'll move on to discussion item 9, policy review, facilitator chair Jason Tisdes.
Thank you, President Austin. Everybody buckle up because I have 600 pages to read now. I'm just kidding. I'm not going to do that. Okay, so the full policy roll-up hit the website, I believe, on Friday afternoon. The board got the whole roll-up with any applicable notes that went along with it. That there was a couple items that we had pins stuck in that we were still discussing, and from that point, I did receive a couple comments from board members. Nothing remarkable that I had jotted down, so I think we are open for discussion over the entire process, if there are any, or any questions.
If you don't mind, since I'm on the policy committee and Lauren's not here, if I can layer in to give a little bit more flavor. I want to, so all policies are incredibly important, and thank you to the entire committee for all of the care that was taken. I do specifically have comments around our policy, our current policy 5517.02, transgender and non-binary students, as heard from some public comment earlier, and also do want to lift a discussion on our DEIAC, which is our other bespoke policy that doesn't live inside of Neola, but does obviously play an important role within our community, as evidenced by Rachel's great presentation on the strategic plan and the references to that committee several times. So if I could start with current policy 5517.02, transgender and non-binary students, I wanted to give a little bit more, and Jason, please layer on. I wanted to give a little bit more flavor, and Lauren's statement kind of alluded to some of this work, which might help with some discussion here at the table. Instead of going through like I usually do about looking at a policy and taking specific things, I want to flip it, and I want to start with what I want. So instead of getting down the path and then getting to the point of saying, and I would like us to consider this, I'm just going to start with that because I think it's that important. What I would like for both of these policies, taking this one first, are 3 things. And I'm going to refer to a bunch of notes because I'm going to try really hard not to forget things that I have heard. I've read a lot of emails today and yesterday, and had a lot of discussions both in person and on the phone with different care holders in the community, and I thank them for that. So I would prefer a separate policy like we have today. I am open to integrating elements of the current policy into the anti-bullying policy, but I would like as much as preserved as possible of our existing policy. I realize that any policy is a standalone, or any policy that's brought into another needs to be legally compliant, and I understand we have a lot of legal advice on that. Number 2, I would like this policy on the next policy committee agenda, as we discussed in our committee already, so that's not a surprise to Lauren or to Jason. And number 3, I do not want this policy to be lost in this transition. So if we think about this policy, and I was one of the members of the board that passed this via unanimous vote through, as Susan alluded, a lot of work. I want representation for these students, and I want us to remember why we did this in the first place. I do realize that we have a lot of policies, especially with our old Neola policies, and it's one of the reasons we are transitioning is there's a lot of duplication and refer to this policy here and this policy there. But to me, duplication in rights is not a bad thing in this regard. And I am okay with it being a duplication and a reinforcement for these students, or for our staff to better understand through administrative guidelines. I know many students personally and their families that this policy affects. I've talked with many of them, like others have as well, I'm sure. I was even volunteering this month in one of our buildings to get ready through one of our PTOs to get ready to go back to school. And this actually came up to me via something that happened with a student. So like, these students are valuable. These students are here. They are part of our Saline family. And it's not just my voice, but the community voice in this matters. So I appreciate everyone speaking and sending emails, both now, but when we created this years ago as well. I really appreciated an example that someone sent me from Comstock Schools. So I've been doing a lot of research on different links. I find that that's a good example of how, if the legal situation is not one that we can have a standalone, again, my preference is to do that. I do think the Comstock example is a good one, and so I have copies of their policy in an article that was given to me, so thank you, where they could make it work with legal and they could preserve some of the elements of their original and separate policy. I would like time to have this go back into committee for more work and more community input. I think that we all need more time to review drafts, legal advice, and deliberate both in committee and here at the table. I wanted to give a little bit of information about what happened in our committee meeting, which is an open meeting. We didn't have anybody there, but we were doing good work. And there was just this feeling of, I don't want to speak again for Lauren because she had a very nice statement, but there was a feeling of we have to try to see what we can do. And so we talked with Jason, and he suggested that we take some of the notes from Rachel's August 13th call with council, and that we collaborate a little and we try to come up with a revision of the current policy, because there were specific things that legal did recommend we immediately, FERPA being one of them, probably the biggest one, that she really felt like we needed to address. And I think we've heard that before as well. So Lauren and I stayed after the policy committee, and what we did is we took the current policy and we began to highlight it. We highlighted with things that if we had to cut, we could potentially cut them, with conversation, of course, with everybody at the table. We highlighted things that, and again, we were trying to understand, I'm not a lawyer, trying to understand why certain things were flagged and highlight them separately, again, FERPA being a very good example. And we tried to highlight things in a different color because we were being advised that some things should be moved into the administrative guidelines. So we started trying to figure out, okay, what would that be, right? Not trying to make judgment, but saying, okay, this potentially is something that legal would want in an AG. So we came up with a draft of the cut policy. It ended up being down around, I want to say 800 or 900 words. That night, we emailed it to Jason and Rachel, which is what we decided to do. And it was immediately sent to legal, which we appreciate that doing. We did get some notes back on Sunday, and then we received the email from our lawyer today. And so what I did in working with Lauren is try to take further advice, right? And so I do have something that is something we could potentially use. I will be completely honest. It is pared down from what we have today. So I think we have on the table to consider, we have what exists today in 5517.02. And then we have what we believe would be something that legal could sign off on us putting over into the anti-bullying policy that Jason read as a first reading tonight, and then we could take this time also to read more about the Comstock situation and what their original policy was as a standalone, what it ended up being as part of anti-bullying as a potential model for the way. So all that said and done, I don't want this to go away. I know we should talk about it, and I've agreed to talk about it in policy committee. I'd love to get everybody's thoughts, but our opinion was we have to try. So that's my piece on that.
I would like to just to add on to what Vice President Stebbins said. The focus is to try to retain what we can in the most legal way forward. If I could make a motion to, if Vice President Stebbins would want to, we could read that into record, and I could make a motion to append that to the 5207 anti-bullying policy, and that could be combined as our first reading of that.
Could I
tonight.
suggest that before we go that way, Darcy and I and others on the board may have some clarifying questions we need to ask, please and thank you.
I think reflecting on the presentation we just had with recalibrating the compass, I thought about the past and the development of this policy, and I went back and watched the meeting from about 5 years ago today. The room was packed. The divider was open. There were so many people here to comment on different aspects of that policy. And prior to that meeting, there had been months of input and revision, and the community was heavily involved in crafting the policy. And I think that we do the disservice to the community by not involving them in the changing of this policy. Many of our policies are dry, dull, and performative in that they're operational, right? This one speaks to the humanity of our students and our staff. In that meeting, students came to speak, alum came to speak, teachers came, admin came to speak at the podium. One teacher read a letter that included signing on from over 50 different teachers, and more were coming in. A pastor spoke. I spoke at that podium in favor of this policy. It acknowledges it uplifts a group of students who are marginalized and experience life differently. When they walk into a school with supportive LGBTQ policies, their outcomes along several different metrics improves. And that improves all of us and our school district. I think that I would like to hear more. I understand that some of the law has changed. I sort of had anticipated hearing in March with the FERPA ruling coming out of the Supreme Court. We didn't, and I just, I assumed we're gonna have to update our policy at some point. But we don't need to do it without the input of parents, students, alum, faculty. We can intentionally bring them in for this conversation. I think that I know how much time and work the policy committee has put in, and you in particular, just as the chair, right, you're naturally doing more of the work. I am so grateful that you did all that work, because a lot of it's dry and dull and very time consuming and tedious. And I appreciate that we are on the same page with an Oxford comma. But a couple of, absolutely. Some of these deserve to be treated differently because they came in differently. And I think that we can practice a pause here, include that policy. I will say I appreciate the thoughts of reading something in and adding it into a different policy, but I think we need to pause completely and wait until we get more input from family members and students and staff. And I think that we move that policy forward and then it goes back into, I think it would be a mistake to eliminate the policy and talk about bringing back a different one. I think we need to honor what we have and the work that was done and adopt it or adapt it from there. And so I appreciate that Jennifer and Lauren have spent some good work like looking at it, but I think it needs eyeballs from many different groups. And so that would be what I would do, is take that policy, keep it, send it back into policy, and proactively invite the community to be a part of that conversation. Because, I mean, we followed our own policies, right? We were here because we followed the path that we were given. And I think that that's acceptable, but I think that we can pause and take a couple of these policies, or at least the transgender policy, and bring it back to the policy committee. Thank you.
Thanks, Darcy. And as one of the initial co-authors with Susan, and who else was on that at the time? Candace
Jenny,
Jones,
Brad,
Aramade
Candace,
briefly, and then Candace. Thank you. We absolutely heard the members of the community, and it was challenging to get it there, as Susan can attest. It took a lot of work, a lot of conversation at the board table, and what we were left with may not have been perfect, but it was certainly an excellent start, and I wanted to comment on that a bit later. Duplication, to your point, Jennifer, is not necessarily a bad thing. I did hear an initial argument, well, this is covered by anti-harassment or anti-bullying, but no, this policy is far more important, as for the many reasons that people in this community have said already. Jennifer, would you share that Comstock link with us? Because this is news to me. I have heard, on the other hand, all sorts of horrific stories in the news recently about teachers, and I want to talk about them in a bit too, so you'll get that to us. Oh.
Yeah, I actually have several things I can send, sure.
I had a question about the color-coded policy. It's wonderful. I've got it here. What do the colors mean? Perhaps you could put in square brackets just to explain why yellow, red, and blue, etc. All right?
I can sure do that and follow up. I don't think that was to help wordsmith at the table. It was Lauren and I, a little note taking.
It just help us to know, or help me to know. I don't know, is this a public facing draft?
It's not. That's
okay.
An editable document. So
just send me a note then.
We probably shouldn't all shoot it in there at the same time, since that's more than 4 trustees.
Okay, but if you would share.
Yes, absolutely.
What the coding meant. I just wondered, is this to be cut? Is this to be altered? Is this from the GLSEN Foundation for?
Yeah, overall it was an initial first pass that we did on what potentially could be cut, what potentially would be recommended for an AG from a legal perspective, what potentially needed to come out based on council's advice, et cetera.
And so we all know at the board table, and the community needs to know too, there is no way ever that this is going away. In one form or another, it will be here for the students, primarily right now as AGs, administrative guidelines. But I want to share a little note of optimism in the midst of all the horrible stories I've been reading about teachers in the field. As some of you know, I teach at Eastern Michigan University. I train new teachers how to use computers in the classroom. That's my elevator speech from floor to 1 to 2. But what I don't share with people is I have had many transgender students in my classes training to become teachers. They know what's out there. They're well aware of it their whole lives. And yet, they say, I can make a difference. I can be a model. I can be that teacher that's going to be helpful. I know we haven't turned the corner yet, but we're getting there to our understanding our transgender students and children and young adults as they go into their careers. And I've had some wonderful interactions with them in my class, and we've had this very straightforward conversation. And they know what's coming, and they're ready for it. They hope they're ready for it, and I'm optimistic with them. I leave my email address. They know they can always reach me, and some have. And last week I gave a presentation at Ypsilanti Community Schools, and in the audience there were only 10 students, 10 teachers there, but 4 of them were my former students, and one of them actually was transgender, and I was so pleased, so proud, and I just wanted to share that this whole board pays a great deal of attention, and I understand your concerns too, and I'm glad you're here to amplify those and share them tonight. Thank you, through your comments. Thank you. And thank you, and thank you to the whole policy committee. In 2018, we did a rescission of the old MASB policies. That was a hard, heavy lift. Thank you, Paul Heineck, and everyone else who was on the committee, Karen Delhay, but we did it, and it was challenging. And I think if I'd seen how many hours we'd spend on Neola policies, I would have maybe recommended a different policy group. I'm pretty happy so far with what I've seen from Troon, and since they are our lawyers, we have a more direct line to them. So thank you, Policy Committee, for your hard work on that.
Did anyone have any other comment on that specific one? Because I just wanted to make one other point, but I don't want to take more air before anyone else speaks. I do want to reinforce and acknowledge that we have things in that existing policy that are going to need to be edited. Absolutely, per law. So if I like this idea of having the separate standalone policy still, great. But we have to do it, we need to get a date for the policy committee to discuss and really dig into that and absorb feedback from the community, to Darcy's point, of course. So if we can get a point and make sure that we're all members of the committee are there, that would be awesome.
And I wanted to lift up a couple things regarding the discussion. The intent wasn't for any of it to go away, and we knew that there wasn't going to be a workable policy that would meet the legal requirements in time. The intention was to lift up the policy and immediately put it into an AG and do exactly what Vice President Seven said, get it scheduled for another meeting so that we can gather additional input. That was the point behind that. So I want to make it clear that the intention was to retain that language into an AG so that we would retain those explicit protections along with the new policy so that we can move forward with that. The new framework that we are adopting is much more flexible and easier to be amended and added to than the previous framework. And that was the intention behind that, as well as the intention for the DEIAC policy as well, was to do the same thing, placeholder it, and then come back and be able to refine that. So there's clarification, because I know there was a lot of unclearness, that's a word, when this was introduced, that it looks as though because it's missing that it's not there, and that's not the intention.
Sorry, so I just want to clarify. The intention was to keep those 2 bespoke policies, move them forward with the new room policies, and then address them.
The transgender and non-binary students policy,
Yep.
with the necessary legal revisions and whatever else would have to be done to that, because there's necessary revisions that need to be done.
But we don't have those revisions yet. So we would need to take the policy as it is and move it forward and work on it again in policy and then come back and change it.
That can certainly be a motion. That wasn't the intention. The intention was to move everything into a workable operational framework immediately, and then work on refining the policy legally. However, that didn't go.
And that's, and it's one way to do it. I'm not necessarily comfortable with that. Again, I feel like we need to honor community voice, and the status quo as it is, as Jennifer said, things need to be changed. I was surprised a couple things hadn't been updated months ago. So we've been living sort of out of compliance for months now. I can't imagine a few more weeks is going to change anything. So that I think that we need to honor the past work, move that forward, and that would be the recommendation that I would make. A modification or a clarification?
Actually,
that,
why don't we hold on that one, because it
Okay.
might be modified even further.
well, and I guess we haven't talked about the DEI
Yeah, exactly.
too much. Okay.
Exactly. So I like what I'm hearing. I think we definitely need to, when we get to the point under action item 10, item A, talk about a revision to that, a few revisions to that potentially. But I did want to lift some things with the DEIAC as well, since we're talking about that. Did anyone have any further comments on transgender and non-binary students policy? Okay, I didn't want to close up any discussion on that. So the DEIAC is a little bit different. So in committee, there was a discussion about lifting it as is and bringing it over to the table and then placing it immediately on the agenda of the next committee meeting. So that's what we moved forward with. After the committee, an option 2 was introduced to the board and placed in the packet, I guess, the list packet. So I guess if we go back to the same format that I followed last time, what do I want with the DEIC? I want the full policy pulled over from our Neola grouping into the Troon, listing out a designation A with no edits, which was the intention of the committee. We didn't have consensus, but it was the intention that I think, and you can speak to this if you want, but everyone had agreed we would pull it over. Placing it on the next committee agenda. I also do not want to lose this policy in translation, because this one is a little bit different. So committees are at the pleasure of the president of the board. So loved him creating some new committees with input from us in alignment with Rachel, the strategic committee being one of them, and we just saw a great report, athletics being another one this year. But we don't ever know who's going to be the president of the board in the future. And so by placing this in a policy, this committee has to exist. One person cannot change a committee that sits in policy. So my third thing is, I don't want to lose this policy in translation, and I would like the existence to be in policy in perpetuity until a group of 7 at the table decide that that's not what needs to happen. So that would mean selecting option 1 on the bundle packet. And I'm just looking at more. Again, I mentioned that Rachel had said DEIAC several times in her presentation, and I like that. I think option 2 has issues outside of Robert's Rules of Order. And I think there has been some really good feedback in emails and things I've heard tonight about terming out, I guess I'll call it that, about who's on the committee, the application process, it not mentioning students as much as I would like it to, it being, and Charlie said it was okay that I say this, it being the preferred option also of the outgoing DEIAC co-chair, knowing that obviously all of that committee input needs to come. So I would prefer the original be pulled over on this one. So would love to hear feedback from the table, but that would mean including that number also in the revised motion.
quick bit of feedback then. So you're abandoning version 2, that draft?
So if you're asking me, I would say yes, but I'm one vote.
I would,
Sorry, for
I would-
clarification.
yes.
So the option 2 was drafted language that was brought before the policy committee. That drafted language was from 7 individual meetings, or more than that. Okay, so the drafted language was not drawn out of thin air. It was from the stakeholders directly related to the DEIAC. Sorry, committee. That's going to be redundant if I say that. So that information, we tabled it and agreed that we would move forward with the existing Neola policy put into the new Troon policy. There was additional discussions done outside of the policy committee individually with stakeholders to verify the information that was written in the policy, that those were the things that were desired in the policy. And I communicated that as such to the board and to the policy just as a board member for additional information. I felt it prudent to ask Dr. Kowalski to also publish that one so that we can get ahead on the public comment. Not that when it says option 1, option 2, that's my fault. It shouldn't have been like that. The second set of language was the additional language that wants to be added or merged into the original policy. The feedback that was received was that the committee had been operating slightly outside of what the existing policy is. There's also new equity teams at each of the buildings that are not included in the existing policy. There's a number of things that are not in the existing policy that the stakeholders, I won't mention the individuals I did speak to, but that had expressed the concern that they needed that additional information into the policy so that they can continue their work. That's why it was brought up. My intention was to bring a motion to add that, but I would not be doing that tonight. I would agree with Vice President Stebbin to just carry over the existing policy until we have time in policy committee to refine that.
I would appreciate that, Jason, because just looking at version 2, I had like 10 to 12 notes and inconsistencies and issues that were missing. And if you want to blend some parts of that into that earlier policy, that would be fine. The transition, I don't think Troon likes it when we take one of our bespoke policies and move it over wholesale, but they understand that they are working for us and will do our bidding. So, thank you.
Well,
Thank you, I think.
Sorry. I just wanted to say it's very clear how much work and time you put into this, and I appreciate that you are bringing options to us and that you're willing to look at and expand those voices. So thank you.
I don't want to squelch any other, but I see Tim working. And I wanted to potentially offer, and I don't want to scoot around our other policies because obviously we should be discussing those if anybody has questions. But Tim, I had a potential suggestion if you didn't already write one out for A whenever you're ready, if you wanted to hear it.
Actually, I do have one random question that I didn't, I thought I had asked, but then I found my notes and didn't. One of our other bespoke policies, and I don't know how bespoke it was, but we talked about like school of choice enrollment, and there was a discussion at one point at a 10% cap. Did that discussion happen this time around?
That the policy committee version of school of choice was posted, I want to say, back in the spring, and some of the roll-ups we've done. Yep, and it's there. It's in your proposed. Mm-hmm.
So if we could talk about some of the other policies. I had a long list of notes to make sure that, that I had sent to you, Jason, and the rest of the committee, and I know they got there. And I was delighted to check that my concerns were checked over board powers, student representatives, board officers, and a couple other things were left off. There was one, a bit of a concern, over 2504, if you can go and take a peek at it, public participation at board meetings. Section B, number 6, I'm happy to share it with you later. The language is confusing. It's just, I tried to follow it and couldn't. I think there might be a verb or two missing, or a modifier. So if you could look at it later in policy committee, and I think once you see it, you'll see it. You get blinded by so many edits and changes. I found others, I dropped a modifier here and there, which we could pick up later. So I'm saying I'm not going to stall this. Another concern I've heard from 3 or 4 board members who are, they don't care, but it's 2306 board member compensation. At this point, you roll it down to 0, which is by law, which is fine. But traditionally, we've had the $30 a meeting, which is not a princely sum. But we may want to talk about that at some point. I've also done. I was asked 2 years ago to reach out to all the other districts and see what they did. And of course, Ann Arbor is heavily compensated, and others are less so. So let's have that discussion. But I'm saying we can pass this sort of thing and discuss later. And there was one other, but it's so minor, it's not worth discussing right now. Thank
Michael,
you.
do you have a suggestion on 6, the written statements and documents, so we can just get that taken care of? That's just a simple fix.
I was going to, but pardon me, but I noticed that I don't have that right here, so I'll have to go and dig through. Section B, number 6, just if you could read it aloud and then.
May I? It would just save us a agenda item
Yeah,
while we're talking about these other things. Written statements and documents presented to the board must be provided to the board's recording secretary for cataloging by a public participant or group, are public records and must be given to the secretary or designee.
Are public records. What, huh? Sorry, they are public records?
They are.
Could you just read it one more time, please?
Sure. Written statements and documents presented to the board must be provided to the board's recording secretary for cataloging by a public participant or group, are public records and must be given to the secretary or designee.
So I guess I was looking for a that or something earlier on. So documents that were provided to the board, is that what you're saying? If I see it again, if I can come up with a better way to say it. It's a fairly long, complicated documents that are going to somebody are this, and let me go over it again. And if I can make sense of the grammar, then groovy. I bet somebody in the audience is going to jump on it right away and say what? It would make more sense as 2 sentences. It did feel like that R was a second sentence. Thank you. Or a couple of other words to lead into the R. Yeah, thanks for the validation. I've got nothing else.
I also want to thank the policy committee, Rachel, all that you guys have done to lift up these policies. It is a massive hurdle to do, and I know time was difficult for scheduling at times because of everybody's, you guys were doing 3-4 hour sessions. I mean, it wasn't easy. So I appreciate all the effort that you guys did do. As far as some of the policies that we've been talking about, 2505A option 1, I understand that the 551702, that one, I'm a little concerned with some of the legal things, but as Darcy has said, we've been operating outside of legal right now. So as long as that is something that is going to be addressed right away. So anyways, that,
I was thinking to actually put September policy. I'm sorry, I'm off mic. I was actually going to suggest that it being placed on the September policy committee meeting is written into the next action item to make sure it's prioritized for legality.
okay. So maybe we will have to talk about what you've got written down there versus what I have written down. So, okay. So yeah, so if we're going to move towards something like that, kind of a against legal's advice, then I would want to have it a priority to
Absolutely.
address.
Well, and I have not, I just saw legal advice come through in my email today. I don't want to make that statement that it is against legal advice until it goes through policy, if that's okay. Yeah. Are we ready to make a motion?
Yeah, do you want me to read the draft I wrote? So the draft for number 10, item A would be, I would like to entertain a motion, please, to adopt the rescind replace resolution with recommendation to adopt the rescind replace resolution that recommends the board repeal its existing policies, so deleting the word Neola, bylaws, and administrative guidelines, with the exception of existing board policies 5517.01 concerning student bullying, 5517.02 transgender and non-binary students, policy Neola policy 9141, Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Advisory Committee, and adopt the Thrun Policy Manual with the exception of policy 5207, anti-bullying. So just to repeat, we're deleting the word Neola. We're adding the transgender policy back in as is, and we're adding the DEIAC policy back in as is. The last line of this recommended motion would read, additionally, 5517.02 and 9141 will be placed on the September Policy Committee meeting agenda.
I'll second
that. Yeah, and I noticed there's one word that should probably also get. Okay. You ready, Betty? Okay. I'd like to entertain a motion to adopt the rescind replace resolution, which recommends that the board repeal its existing policies, bylaws, and administrative guidelines, with the exception of existing board policies 5517.01 concerning student bullying, 5517.02 transgender and non-binary students, policy 9141, Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Advisory Committee, and adopt the Thrun Policy Manual with the exception of policy 5207, anti-bullying. Additionally, 5517.02 and 9141 will be placed on the September Policy Committee agenda.
Okay, I have a procedural question then. Do we also need to update the actual resolution to reflect this? So that would be something.
Yes. Yeah. Thank you for that. It's in the board packet. Yeah. That's probably the secretary would do that. And
the secretary will definitely sign that one.
Question regarding 9141 in existing Neola policy. Since we already have that enumerated as 2505A in its entirety, do we have to do that, or
I
can
thought
we?
about that, and I thought to keep it consistent with the call out on 5517, 01, and 02, that I think we should retain 9141 nomenclature until it's discussed in policy committee, and then it would be changed in draft. Because if we decide to pull it over, it comes over as is.
Yeah, so I was kind of thinking the same thing as you, but then I kind of agree with you, Jennifer, that let's just leave it the old policy number, and then once we refine it, we just bring it over once refined.
So I second, and I appreciate again everybody's hard work on this.
So we had Jennifer motioned. No other questions or comments, hopefully? Darcy? Jennifer? Hearing no other questions or comments, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, motion carries 6-0. Nate, did you? Oh. Okay, so that motion carries 5-1 then. Okay. Trustee Hansen.
Aye.
Treasurer McVeigh.
Aye.
Aye. Secretary Berwick. Aye.
Aye.
President Austin. Aye. Vice President Stebbin.
Aye.
Trustee Tizidas.
Aye.
Aye. Yeah, it was 6-1 or 6-0. Sorry. Okay, number 2, recommend a motion to approve the adoption TCI's History Alive World Connection as Saline High School's World History and History Alive, pursuing American ideals for Saline High School U.S. history beginning in the 26-27 school year, as submitted by Kara Davis, Assistant Superintendent of Teaching and Learning.
So moved, McVeigh.
Support Hanson.
Any questions regarding that? All in favor?
Aye.
I had no questions, but I did want to say, one of the TCI books had some amazing original primary source documents in there. I was, what? Of course I would. Oh, me? No. No. But there, I was very impressed, and I didn't get to take American history in high school, but I'm pretty impressed by what the students are going to encounter with this. Thank you.
I mean, it's something you would say.
Did you take Canadian history in high school?
We just called it history.
Okay, back to the vote one more time. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, hearing none, motion carries 6-0. C, I recommend a motion to approve the Saline Area Schools 2026-2032 strategic plan goals overview and goals presented by Superintendent Kowalski, and I will motion that.
I will support that.
Any questions on that? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Hearing no nays, motion carries 6-0. Okay, I recommend a motion to approve the closed session meeting minutes of July 14th, 2026 and August 4th, 2026 as submitted by Board Secretary Darcy Berwick. Okay. Second on that.
Support Tizidas.
Hey, Tim, I hate to be a pain on this one. I was absent for the July meeting, so I would need to abstain from approving the minutes, so we might need to pull it apart, and I just can comment on the August. Yeah.
Not to be a pain, but I don't know what our new policy says on this, but the old one said that you don't abstain even if you weren't here. An abstention is an acceptance of the motion.
Well, just to call attention to me
All
not
right.
being here in July then.
Oh. And Jennifer, I left you on both of those. So we are gonna have to make that edit anyway
Okay,
to
all
pull
right.
you off.
I had to pull up my calendar to be sure I was right, but I
No, you were,
remembered.
but yeah, and
Okay.
I just, because sometimes it's just easy to copy and paste board members present. And then I didn't go back and take you off, sorry.
Vice President Stebbin is
I did
not
it
on
right.
July 14th.
You know, it's right.
I
You
did
might
it.
want to just say not present, but you don't really have to if you don't want to.
Okay.
all set with that? Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. Is that gonna be 5-0 with you abstaining?
Yeah, who moved and who seconded?
Michael moved and Jason seconded.
Okay, great.
Okay, so consent agenda. Recommend a motion to authorize the consent agenda as printed.
So moved, Steppen.
Support Trustees.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, motion carries 6-0. Items scheduled on the next agenda.
Are thrilled to be introducing our 2026-2027. What time do we start in the morning? New hires, new hire Hornets, and of course, very excited to see everyone in just a few hours here. And we'll also then have a resolution to adopt the anti-bullying policy 5207, and I'm sure we'll have an update at the table then from the policy committee.
Thank you. Public comment. Member of the public may address the board briefly for up to 3 minutes or request to be scheduled on a future agenda. This is the second public comment, and we have some of those. The first one will be Susan Eastep, parent. Actually, I don't have your first name, it's just the middle and first initial. Oh, okay.
Wait, is this on? Yeah, it's on. There we go. Hi. I've been here before. Hi. So, as for the trans and non-binary policy, I understand we're trying to follow federal orders and basically not get screwed over, but I want to know what you're promising. I know you're trying to filter it into administrative guidelines, but what are you promising? What is expected of teachers using preferred pronouns, names, that sort of thing? Because once we go into guidelines, there's no promise. There's nothing I can build off of. Where can I read this? Also, I'm hoping that somewhere we can keep a copy of this, if it does go into administrative guidelines, a copy of the policy right now so that we can bring it back as soon as we legally can without having to rewrite it all over again and take another 5 years doing that. We talked about other, like teachers leaving, this sort of thing, queer students, that sort of thing. But like I know 2 queer teachers who have left way before their retirement, and I'm wondering why. I'm not wondering why, I know why, but I'm asking you. Students, again, who don't feel safe going to school, aren't excited to go to school because of these policies, because we don't know what's being promised. I understand you're trying to say we're making this as good as possible, but how? We want to know why. We want to know the wording. We want to know that we are still safe, that teachers are still going to respect us, and they are still required to, and they will still be held accountable, because we've been working for this for years, regardless. Going on to the compass that it's Dr. Kowalski, right? Dr. Kowalski was talking about. For different things, did we talk with minority groups, clubs, parents? Did we actually seek them out? Because I know you had listening sessions, you had these things, but did you come find us? Because there are so many clubs, especially at the high school, that would love to talk to you and can't necessarily just show up to your meeting. So come find us. I'm the president of like 3 clubs at the high school, and I know all the other presidents. So come find us, email us. We'd love to speak with you. Other things on the compass. I'm just interested, why aren't connections and community first? Why aren't those our north? Because I don't know if you've noticed, but we seem to only make the news for garbage, for racism again and again, for talking or taking out policies and problems with trans and non-binary students. And to me, those are some of the biggest things, those are the impacts, those are the things I want to see change. And so to me, having that be like, that's somewhere in there, kind of reinforces the problem we already have. You talked about test scores being down from like when you're in person, like our school versus on the weekend. That's because what we have, pardon my language, what we call Hell Week. Because you put us through the ringer 3 days in a row that we have to do these testings. Is there a way we can spread this out? Is there a way that it can be less terrible? Because I can tell you the end of the week, the last day, it's going to suck. My scores are going to suck. And that's not my fault. I can't fix that. And again, you can go take the SAT somewhere else. Where? With what money? Who's providing that? You? You're not. You want us to take AP classes? Where's the money coming from? You want more athletics? Where's that money coming from? Because it can't be us. We don't have the money. There are students that don't. Also, you want us to take AP classes, more difficult classes, then we need better teachers. Sometimes there's a class I want to take and I need a better teacher. And that's it. Like, there shouldn't be a case where I'm like, no, you shouldn't take this class because that teacher sucks. That's a problem. That's a problem. And I'm not saying they don't have the capability of being a great teacher, but for whatever reason, they're not. Surveys, can students safely answer surveys? Why aren't they anonymous? Again, where does it say in our stuff that teachers will know, understand, and comply with 504s, IEPs? My teachers never know. And sorry, I have so much stuff. You'll see me in September. Our guidelines, promises, I don't know. Let us know. Thanks.
Okay, the second public comment will be Susan Eastet.
Really, you're making me follow you up? Sorry. Yeah, I got it. Just another reminder that Collins and Blaha is one of your legal firms, I believe, that you can consult. Again, they helped us with that policy. They helped Ann Arbor schools and Plymouth Canton. And so I think it's weird that we are going under through policies, but not able to have other policies that will be backed up regardless from a legal team. They are continuing to back up Ann Arbor right now. So just reminder there, I'm not sure why you all are going, if they're saying no, that, or all of these other edits, that you can't say, hey, we're backed up by them. I want to thank you all for amending the recommended motion, and I appreciate all the discussion, the comments. I am going to criticize the policy committee chair, maybe not, maybe some, just in general, as far as, well, maybe the board president, as far as putting this recommended motion on and how much editing it had to have. I just think it was messy. Hearing some of the discussion as far as the DEI AC policy, the trans policy, and kind of the administrative guidelines, which you all were rescinding as well. I didn't hear, okay. So I want to bring up just real quick before time goes out, looking at the policy committee agenda and minutes. For example, August 5th, the agenda was A, through and policy transition. The minutes say August 5th, through and policy transition, continued work on through and policy transition. Additionally, I haven't seen these minutes in the board agenda and packet, at least over the past few months. I'll continue to go through and see if there's any, but I mean, the minutes are supposed to be to make it public about what the discussions are, and that you all the board members are seeing that. So those are just some things that I've noticed during the past couple of days. So, thanks.
The next public comment is Christy Lilly, parent.
Good? All right, my name's Christy Lilly. I know some of you, so just want to say thank you so much for this meeting. You guys have just shown a lot of professionalism, and I'm super impressed. So this is a tough conversation, and I, applaud the community for providing feedback, and I think you guys landed in a really good place. I actually had planned to talk before, but I think I filled out the wrong form, so I ended up talking after. So it just goes to show. But what I did want to say is a couple of things. One, I was so impressed, Rachel. I love the data. Couldn't have been more impressed by how much was put into that. And whether you take, all 50 metrics or just pick 3 and move the needle on them this year, so impressed. And then on the policy, I will say I am actually a supporter of moving to the integrating into the TRIM policy. I have seen Neola's policies. I've seen what happens when policies don't work right, and I do think consistency, from a 5,000-foot level is useful. This was a really good example of we do need to customize and look at what we're doing across the board, and I think you guys have done that beautifully. I will say a couple of things. I spent today just looking through Thrun's policy, and I think our existing transgender non-binary policy maps to 6 different TRIM policies. So it's the anti-discrimination, the dress code, the FERPA ones in the student records. So I think that's useful in the context of the belt and suspenders, Jennifer, that you were talking about, right? But also, for the next meeting, that's what I would love to see. And maybe you were doing this with the color coding. It's just here's this one. It's also in the anti-discrimination. Here's this statement. It's in the dress code policy. Here's this one on FERPA that's in the student record. So I think it is. And I know I'm being logistical about it, but I think it might be that simple to help tell the community this is what we're doing with everything, whether we're doing the belt and suspenders or we might lose something. FERPA's a good example of that, and that's okay, but let's just be honest that this is what we're doing. We are gonna lose it, and Susan, maybe another law firm, may disagree, but at least we're all being honest about what's happening, because I don't think we're losing as much as it might feel like to the students. And so that communication strategy that you guys come up with out of this is almost the most important thing. So I wanted to come today to band the group together to be this isn't a divisive, people, we're all doing the right thing here. Everyone cares about students, but you guys have done it because you all voted 6-0. Everyone voted in the same way. So super happy to see you guys, and thank you for having me. I'll hit the button.
The next public comment is Charlie Hurst.
Cards ready because I'm jumping all over the place. So originally, when we were discussing the DEIAC policy, it dawned on me that we allow our middle school and high school students to apply if someone serves 4 years while they're a student at SAS. They might want to come back and serve as a parent in the district. And for me, in my life, I've moved 17 times in 3 different states. For my children, I wanted them to stay in the same school district the entire time. That did not get to happen. But other people who do get to live in one place for a while, wow, I'm so jealous. It's amazing. So if we say that you can't reapply, it's going to prevent those students, which they're the basis of every decision we make, it'll prevent them from being on it in the future. Dr. Kowalski, I loved your presentation. I thought it was very exciting. I really appreciate that you were calling out the chronically absentee rate, 613 students, 13.2%. I want to know how many of those students are not showing up because they don't feel safe at school, because they're getting bullied at school. We have to look at attendance as an indicator of success, and we need to take proactive steps, because often when we talk about attendance, we're really talking about school funding. We're so worried about that school funding, but we really need to be looking at the root causes and taking care of what those are to allow people to move forward. I do want to make sure that everybody is aware that Saline Social Services has a youth financial aid fund. I only learned about this last week. I think if we let more students know, hey, if you do need help paying for that SAT course, you can reach out to them and you can apply. If you want to, go on this trip, you can. So there are some other ways. I just would love SAS to do more making people aware of that. Like, every coach should be saying proactively to their people, like, if there's a financial issue, let us know. We can try to address it. We also have Saline Social Services to provide this. So the other thing about administrative guidelines is my understanding is currently they're only in a physical space and you have to go get them. So having those online, I think, to search through, is that okay? The last thing I want to just say is about board compensation. So yes, now it's $30. Do not change it to $0 because you're making decisions for future people who might run for this school board. And someone like me, Michael McVeigh, was like, hey, Charlie, will you run for school board? And I said, pay me, because this isn't a volunteer job, So if you don't want the money, don't take it, but don't make that choice, and we'll discuss this further. Thank you.
Next public comment, Libby Williams, parent.
That's not cool. Oh, I think they left it on. Good. All right. So I'm actually going to piggyback a little bit on what you said. First, I want to thank the board members who spoke tonight in support of preserving the transgender and non-binary students policy and the protection it provides. I appreciated hearing the members acknowledge the importance of the policy and the considerable work that went into creating it, and the students whose safety, dignity, and well-being are directly affected by it. I was interested in the discussions surrounding the policy, that it raises a different and I believe equally important set of questions, actually. This policy was developed locally, reviewed through the district's policy process, and formally adopted by an elected board of education. I understand from tonight's discussion that there may now be provisions within that policy that the council believes present legal concerns. If that legal assessment has changed since the policy was adopted, I think the community deserves to understand specifically what has changed. Which provisions are now considered legally problematic? What law, court decision, regulatory change, or other legal development has caused those provisions to be reconsidered by Troon? And perhaps most importantly, is Troon advising the district that portions of the existing policy cannot legally remain, or is Troon recommending that the district change or remove language because council now considers it a legal risk? Because those are very different things. The fact that the district is changing policy providers should not, by itself, determine whether a locally developed policy previously approved by this board survives in its current form. If there are legitimate changes in the law that require portions of this policy to be rewritten, the community should be told what those changes are. If instead this is a difference in legal philosophy, risk tolerance, or policy preference between Neola and Troon, the community deserves to know that as well. Because these bespoke policies did not simply appear in the policy manual. They were created here, they were debated here, and approved by elected representatives of this community. Changing policy providers does not erase that history, nor should it diminish the community's role in determining what happens to the policies it previously supported. If the law has changed, explain that to us. If language must change, then tell us specifically why. But if these changes are recommendations or preferences rather than legal requirements, please make that distinction equally clear. The community has a right to question changes to previously approved policies, to demand transparency about the reasons for those changes, and to advocate and, when necessary, fight for policies it believes protect Saline students. Thank you.
The next public comment, David Hayward, parent.
I applaud the decision that you made, and we'll see what you do with it at the next meeting. Thanks.
The next public comment, Tiffany Alexander, parent.
So first, I want to thank the student. Following that up is rough. Second, I want to thank Trustee Steppen, who it is firmly with my belief that had Trustee Steppen not advocated for this community, we would not be landing where we are today. I thank you. Second, I want to thank Trustee Darcy Bruick, who passionately brought up the points of why this is so incredibly important. And without that passion, I'm not quite sure, again, that we would be where we are today. Third, I want to thank Superintendent Kowalski. That was a very clear report for me. And one of the things that stuck out in my head massively was how we have been talking about gaps to the board between disadvantaged groups for years. So to hear the shock is shocking to me, which I think points out, as Trustee Bruick pointed out, and Superintendent did, the importance of community feedback. That it was only because of this community feedback and working together collaboratively that this information was truly absorbed and brought to the board as a whole. So I want to point that out. Second, I have some concerns. Trustee Tzitzis said the stakeholders were the people that talked about this DISA policy. This makes me very nervous for every single policy that the board has. Two reasons. One, we just heard from two people on the DISA committee, as far as I know, one who was on it previously and one, as far as I know, is currently on it now, unless I am mistaken, and they seem to have no idea. More importantly, I served on the DEI. I was never a stakeholder as a DEI member. I was only a stakeholder as a parent. The children are the stakeholders. And if you're not thinking about that, that is a problem for every single thing you do moving forward. The children are the stakeholders, Trustee. The children. The second most important stakeholders are the families. The DIC members exist to represent those populations. So yes, how the DIC operates, of course, they are the ones who are supposed to have the say-so, but again, they are the community members mainly. The community is the one who fought to have this existing. But the reason that they're stakeholders is because they're representing the students. The students are the stakeholders, and that was just completely forgotten. So please, when you move forward, consider them. They are the stakeholders.
The next Board of Education meeting will be held on September 8th, 2026 at 6:30 p.m. Can I have a recommended motion to adjourn the regular Board of Education meeting August 25th, 2026 at 9:19 p.m.?
So moved.
Support Tzitzis.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, motion carries 6-0.